It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out.
That was funny.
They come inside, just like they did to our country.
That was funny.
Republicans are the party with a good sense of humor. It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, you know, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
I didn't find that to be funny.
All right.
I really didn't.
Okay.
And I don't think the crowd did either. And if I was Puerto Rican, I would be greatly offended.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for choosing us today. So there is a video that is actually blowing up on the internet, especially on X and TikTok. It's a video of Tony Hinchflick. I'm sure some of you guys have seen this video already. And if you have not, I have actually put it here so that you can check it out. It's actually a comedian that was invited at a Trump's rally in Madison Square, New York, and he ended up actually saying that Puerto Rico is a floating island of garbage. Many people are pissed actually and have been reacting and calling him out and actually reminding him that Puerto Ricans are American citizens. So guys, if you're new to this channel, kindly like the video. It helps with the algorithm. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about today's video. So let's jump right into it. I'm gonna come back and give my commentary.
As a Puerto Rican, I am livid. Today at Trump's rally in New York City, Madison Square Garden, a podcaster by the name of Kill Tony equated Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage. Not only did he say that, but he also stated that Latinos love making babies and they don't know how to pull out. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside like they do our country. Little does this asshat know that Puerto Ricans are Americans. And if the majority of the Puerto Ricans left the island, came to the States to vote, Republicans would be asked the fuck out. Do you know how many Puerto Ricans live in swing states? How easily they forget that Donald J. Trump, during his presidency, when Hurricane Maria hit the island of Puerto Rico, he went to the island for a photo shoot. He delayed response to Puerto Rico. And not only that, but when he did go visit the island, he threw paper towels at my people. As soon as this statement was made at his Trump rally, Bad Bunny, the biggest and most popular Puerto Rican artist, reggaetonero, came out and endorsed Kamala Harris on his Twitter account of 45 million followers. He actually posted a video as to what Kamala Harris and the plans that she has for Puerto Rico and its economy. If you are a Puerto Rican and you are still voting for Donald J. Trump, shame the fuck on you. You know what we call people like you? Vendepatrias.
We're not laughing. 6 million Puerto Ricans in the U.S., the second largest population of Latinos in the U.S., are not laughing. Mexicanos, Colombianos, Hondureños, Salvadoreños, and every nationality represented here from every Latin American country are not laughing. In fact, all 65 million Latinos living in the U.S. don't think it's funny what was said last night at the Trump rally. And let's make one thing clear. His campaign began in 2016, declaring war against all Latinos by calling all Latinos rapists and murderers. And suddenly, every racist person in America found their leader. They no longer had to hide behind the keyboard. Now they have a voice, and they can say what they really think of all Latinos. And this leader gave them a voice like he did last night at Madison Square Garden. We're not garbage, rapists, murderers. We're teachers, doctors, attorneys, journalists, and yes, farm workers. We are generations of sweat and tears that has made the U.S. what the country is today. Our presence is everywhere. Schools, hospitals, courts, restaurants, hotels. And you would not be eating that plate of food without a Latino first pick those fruits and vegetables. Oh, and one more thing. Latinos, we can also vote.
I don't know how this happened, but things actually just managed to go from bad to worse for Trump as the campaign continues dealing with the crushing fallout from yesterday's Madison Square Garden rally in New York. It turns out that the comic who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage was also planning on referring to Kamala Harris as the C word, but that got flagged by the campaign. And so think about what that tells you. It shows you that they vetted the material, meaning they approved of calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. They decided that was okay. Look, Latinos, Donald Trump doesn't have an ounce of respect for you. He rose to power calling you rapists and drug dealers, and now he's giving the green light for Puerto Rico to be called trash on the literal biggest stage in the United States of America. Do not reward a guy who hates you by giving him exactly what he's looking for.
So Trump held a Klan rally in the middle of New York where he had people talking shit about Puerto Ricans, about Jewish people, about black folks, you know what I'm saying? They even made statements like America is for Americans. Like, not only is Trump married to an immigrant, they had goddamn Elon Musk, the South African settler up in there, you feel me? You really disrespected Puerto Ricans in the middle of New York? Like, that's crazy to me.
And these Latinos, they love making babies too. Just know that. They do. There's no pulling out.
What if I told you that the hypersexualization of Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans was a part of the Colonial project of that island? And yes, I said Colonial project, even though I know Puerto Rico is an American territory, but yes, that is a colony, Cold War in 2024. Think about it. When we're talking about the Great Replacement Theory, this idea that Latinos is going to come in and do all this is because they say they're goosing like rabbits. The language that he disputed in New York, to me, it's like you got to New York, a migrant metropolis, and spit a whole bunch of anti-immigrant, you know what I'm saying? To be clear, Puerto Ricans are American citizens. You see what I'm saying? So he was able to justifiably talk shit about America in front of Americans for the American presidency, all in the name of saying some racist jokes. There's a legacy in this country that says that Latino men are so hypersexualized they can't control that thing in their pants, so we have to literally lock them up and police them at high levels. There's also a legacy in this country that says that Latino women are so hypersexualized you can't even really take advantage of them. You can't rape them because they always already ready for it. It's like the same playbook copied and copied and copied again because, you know, Asian Americans and Black Americans also know what we're talking about. The last thing, think about how much these folks always talking about what's said and what's appropriate for children and to children. What are they teaching children about Puerto Ricans in? Ooh, how? I thought we letting the kids be kids, so we ain't pushing that particular concept on children.
Puerto Rico is a floating pile of garbage in the middle of the ocean. Primarily, I think it's really interesting that this analogy is being used in support of a campaign that refuses to acknowledge the literal garbage patches in the Pacific Ocean because they refuse to acknowledge the corporate incentivized degradation of the environment or climate change or anything related to the sort. But that it's always the people actively dehumanizing Puerto Ricans on a national stage, using our poverty rates and our economic situation to disparage us, that refuse to discuss how we arrived to this point. Ever thought and wondered why, despite two parties being complicit in the political, social, and economic repression, the lack of acknowledgement, because I will say that I find it quite appalling that the Democratic National Convention did not mention Puerto Rico as a part of their agenda at all until there was an opportunity and a moment to seize. The United States of America, despite their clear lack of regard for the Puerto Rican people, fight tooth and nail to hold on to us, to make sure that the quote-unquote last colony in the world, debatable term, is kept under the US empire? Is it perhaps the multi-billion-dollar revenue stream that you make out of our occupation every year? Mexico is not a territory that arrived out of thin air, poor and underdeveloped. It is a territory that was invaded by the United States, a victim of a military dictatorship and the consequent artificial degradation of our economy to satisfy US corporate and political interests. Think about the debt. Have you thought 2 seconds to think about who this debt is owed to? The debt that has paralyzed development in Puerto Rico and that has geared all of our resources towards satisfying this repayment. Wall Street. Who's in power in Puerto Rico, overruling the say of the local elected officials, democratically elected by the Puerto Rican people? They go below what? A fiscal oversight management board. With who? With representatives from Wall Street. How did Puerto Rico even enter the United States imperial paradigm? Invasion, right? And after invasion, what was the first thing the United States did, besides the military dictatorship and the degradation of any kind of lasting democratic institution that was there? Devalue the local currency. It has always been an economic project. Devalue the local currency to 40% of a US dollar. What does that mean? Every Puerto Rican that had money in the bank, that had a property in hand, it was suddenly worth 60% less than it was before. From day, literally a 10-minute video, a 20-minute video is not enough for me to outline every single policy and mechanism that the United States has undertaken to thwart the growth of the Puerto Rican people, to decimate our spirit, to decimate our culture, literally and figuratively, because in terms of population, there was a literal eugenic program that used Puerto Rican women as birth control lab rats, sterilizing them against their will with the legal rationale that this is somehow okay because we needed to control our too quickly growing brown and poor population, which I remind you is the same argument imposed in the insular cases, which is the set of Supreme Court decisions that outline the paradigm of the colony and that justify why we are how we are. And this isn't me making it up word for word. The reason Puerto Rico has a position where the Constitution doesn't follow the flag is because of our distinct brown and inferior population. And these cases have been cited again recently, twice. So this isn't a remnant of an antiquated set of policies that was somehow forgotten. This is reaffirmed recently. Another example I really like to bring up to people is the plantain crisis. After the hurricane and the natural disaster, Puerto Ricans were having a hard time supplying the demand for plantains. And say, in order to fulfill this need, you wanted to buy plantains from the Dominican Republic. They couldn't come in Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. They had to go Dominican Republic, Florida, pay the extra cash to switch it into a US vessel, and then come to Puerto Rico. That is how all of our economy functions when it comes to providing basic goods. So think about that during the hurricane. We only received a 10-day waiver from this policy, which is imposed during the Jones Act. So if countries sent us international aid and they arrived to Puerto Rican ports after those 10 days, they were returned. Either you go to Florida, switch into a US vessel, and then come back, or go back to where you came from. When you needed sugar, we were a sugar colony. When you didn't need it anymore, dump it out, figure it out. When you needed manufacturing during World War II, Puerto Rico's a manufacturing colony. When that supply can come from a mainland state, dump it out, figure it out. When you're organizing politically at the local level, if it goes against us, FBI, surveillance, kill you, figure it out. Like, if we are garbage, USA, I want you to be reminded that you created it. And before you ever even consider referring to Puerto Ricans as inferior to you, I want you to remind yourself that despite centuries of dehumanization and political, social, and economic repression, Puerto Ricans have retained their sense of identity, we've retained our culture, we've retained our language, we've retained our spirit, we've retained our power, and we are still here giving you a fight.
When I saw conservative comedian Kill Tony say at a Trump rally in Madison Square Garden today that Puerto Rico is a pile of trash in the middle of the ocean, as somebody who grew up in the state of Florida, the first thing that went through my mind was, are you fucking stupid? And yes, I understand that this is a comedian, and I understand that he's on stage to make jokes. He also made a joke about Black Americans carving watermelons during Halloween. The thing that really actually just baffles me, though, is that the Trump campaign did this having to know the fact that this would be cut up, this would be put on the internet, this could be potentially run in campaigns, and Florida is very much in play right now. And I don't know if anybody at the Trump campaign did any research before they allowed Kill Tony to go on that stage, but there are 1.2 million Puerto Ricans in the state of Florida right now. Not to mention the fact that Latinos make up 17% of the overall voting population in the state. Most people incorrectly assume that most Latino voters are in the southern part of the state, but that's actually not true. In the past 20 years, there has been an explosion of Latino voters in the central part of Florida, which over the course of the past few election cycles has been more Republican than Democrat. But you have counties like Marion, Polk, Pasco, Pinellas, all of these types of counties that are in the central part of the state, from Tampa to Orlando and those surrounding counties, those are very, very much having high volumes of Latino voters over the course of the past 20 years. The only thing in my head that I could think of was the voters registration deadline for Florida passed on October 7th. So maybe they're just hedging their bets that this isn't going to drive a lot of people to actually register to vote, or they're hedging their bets that Latino voters don't turn out. But even then, the risk of just having somebody for laughs and to be able to entertain an audience in Madison Square Garden, that could come at the expense of a large population of voters in the state of Florida, it just doesn't make sense. I understand that Latino voters, they are a little bit skewing towards Democrat, but there is a huge population of Latino Republican voters, because they are conservative, because they come from Christian backgrounds, who have traditionally voted for Republicans. And I think if this was to get in front of them, if the statement that Puerto Rico is a pile of trash in the middle of the ocean were to be able to seen by them at a Trump-Vance rally, I think that that could actually influence a couple thousand votes. And as we are aware, based off the past few election cycles, a couple thousand votes really, really matters right now.
All right, folks, there you have it. But before I give you my opinion, let me read you what Tony Hinchcliffe actually tweeted after his racist remarks actually went viral. He says, "These people have no sense of humor, while that the vice presidential candidate would take time out of his busy schedule to analyze a joke taken out of context to make it seem racist. I love Puerto Rico and vacation there. I made fun of everyone. I am a comedian team. Might be the time to change your tampon." Well, it is said that before going to the stage, the comedian has been vetted. So which means his jokes were vetted very well and they allowed that joke to pass, knowing that actually that could have cost them a lot of votes from Puerto Ricans, who are the second majority Latinos in the country, over 6 million Puerto Ricans. And this actually might have cost them a lot of Puerto Rican voters. So if he was vetted, they allowed that joke to go through. But why called a whole island, garbage? Because Puerto Ricans are actually rightfully American citizens, and Puerto Ricans cannot vote in Puerto Rico, but they can vote in the States. So those who have traveled in the state, they have the right to vote. They can vote. He was also making such jokes as, Latinos love making babies and they cannot pull out. And that's how, they come into the Americas. Such jokes in a presidential campaign that actually children are watching is such, absurd thing to have in a presidential campaign. So a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of Latinos have been actually angry at what these remarks were saying about them. Guys, I don't know what you thought about today's video. Let me know in the comment section. What do you think about today's video? Was this right? Or was it a joke? Or was it overboard? Thank you very much for watching this far. Please remember to subscribe, like the video, drop a comment, and as always, guys, see you on the next episode.